Okay, now we can start. Call the meeting of the Board of the Port Authority of Allegheny County, TDBA, Pittsburgh Regional Transit to order. And our first order of business is a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for victims of gun shooting in this country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Given that there are only two of us here in person today, I'm going to go through a roll call and make sure we've got everybody lined up. Jen Liptak.
Here.
Yeah, oh, good. Thanks, Jen. Senator Brewster. Ann is here. I see you physically. Representative Davis.
Here, Mr. Chairman.
Gerald DeLon. Representative Mizgorski.
Present.
John Tague.
Here.
Stephanie Turman.
Here.
Jessica Wells Laval.
Here.
And Michelle Zemanek.
Present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. Okay, with that, the first order of business is the approval of the meeting, minutes of the meeting of May 27th. May I have a motion for their approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the report of the Chief Executive Officer, Katharine Kelleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. First board meeting of summer. May I please have a moment of silence for the retired procurement coordinator, Arthur Waller, who has passed away since last we met. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. A few years ago, we began recognizing operators who have exemplified safety throughout their careers. Today, we have a few operators, thank you for joining us today, who have literally driven more than 1 million miles without a chargeable accident on their record. I want to put this in context. If you drive 15,000 miles a year, which is kind of high, and definitely post-pandemic, a lot of us aren't doing that. If you drove 15,000 miles a year, you would drive from age 16 to 91 and still not get to 1 million miles. These drivers and operators have gone well over that without a single chargeable accident. I couldn't even get off my learner's permit without driving into a gas pump. So now you know why I don't drive. Safer for everybody. But this is a huge accomplishment to go so long without a chargeable accident. And our drivers don't just drive to work or get to the grocery store. They're sitting in that seat for over 8 hours a day, 5 days in a row for years and years on end, with all the crazy traffic that's out there. And a large vehicle, which can be hard to get out of the way. On the rail side, you would think it might be easier, but how many times do we see people just kind of rolling through an intersection? Our T-lines are integrated in our communities, which means there's a lot of opportunities to have little fender benders. And to not have a chargeable accident, again, you have already beat my record. That was when I was 15 years old. So I would like to recognize 4 of our operators. One could not join us today, but we would like to recognize you and do some pictures to as a small token of appreciation. So our first operator is Francis Clothier. Did I get your name correct? From Ross. Come on up, sir. Mr. Clothier's been driving 30 years without a single chargeable accident. Come on.
Oh.
Yeah, they use a plaque to.
And, oh, got a code.
You gotta grab this plaque.
Tuck up. I broke the last one. All right. Don't drop and break it back. Thank you. His driving record could run for the Senate. And that's all I'm going to say about that. We also have 4 rail operators of 25 years without a chargeable accident from South Hills Village. And I would say we have one of the best safety records in the industry, and it's because of you gentlemen. Thank you so much. So we have Robert McAdams. Patrick Roth. Mario Fabiano.
Hello.
Mario.
Hello.
And Gregory Lyons, who was not able to join us today. And Mario is bringing up the shades, right? That's okay. Sharpsburg
Yep,
Mario.
I'm on the call.
Okay. And then we also have operator John. And John, I'm going to get your last name wrong. Boradicia, thank you so much. From East Liberty, he's also got 25 years. No, wait, no. I saw Mr. Roth yesterday at out at Castle Shannon. And he said, I'll see you tomorrow. I thought, oh, what have I done now? Mario, we had to get you an award for you to see
Diane, will you tell them Senator Brewster's on the phone?
Yes. Great. Thank you.
Jim, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a flash. Thanks. I know Mario from the incline, so every Christmas he posts a video of us out at the incline by the old scaffolding, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. I know it sounds cheesy, but I cannot thank you enough. None of us here at this organization can thank you enough for everything you do to continue to make us safe. When we talk to passengers, what do they want? Safe, reliable, convenient transportation. You are the bedrock of a safe transportation system. Thank you so much for everything you do. As you know, about 2 weeks ago, we announced our plans to rebrand from Port Authority over to Pittsburgh Regional Transit, and I am thrilled that our board is considering this as an official resolution today. Before we get there, I wanted to take a minute to assure our board, our employees, and our riders, this isn't just a name change. This is capturing the culture change that we have been moving through leading up to the pandemic and all the excellence that every level of this organization displayed during the pandemic. It's not just a fresh coat of paint, though realistically, from a maintenance perspective, only having one color instead of 13 is probably an improvement. Though the name Port Authority is part of Pittsburgh and it's part of the legacy of Pittsburgh, what we definitely have seen in the past few years is we're ready to move into that next step. We are ready to come from the background to the foreground of building a better city. We've seen in the past few years an appreciation for people not having to drive or having safe, reliable transportation that could get them everywhere they wanted to go. And how often our passengers would take for granted that our vehicles were clean, that our operators were able to take care of them, that during a pandemic when the world was literally on fire, they knew that this transit agency, because they're outstanding workers, would get them there and they would be safe. This is just the icing on this cake to push us forward into this new era of focusing on our customer excellence through focusing on our employee excellence. Just as Pittsburgh continues to evolve for the better, it's our time too. So now, while we have been Port Authority or PAT, or what before that, Mr. Chair?
No, I don't remember.
We still call our rail cars trolleys. I know that we have long memories. We're in the old Kaufman's building. But we are ready for this next change to show off who we are. And post-pandemic, as people around the country don't have to live in the town where they're working and they can make a choice, Being able to give them a really easy to understand transit choice moves us to the front of the line. When folks now are coming to Pittsburgh, our customer service doesn't have to tell them, go downtown, look on the corner to 13 different colors, but make sure it doesn't say Beaver or Butler, make sure it says Port Authority. Not being in the position of trains that don't match the buses so you don't know they play nicely together. Not being in the position where you're trying to catch the bus on Banksville Road and it says bus stop, as opposed to where's the route going and how do we get you information. So it's easier for folks to use, but the Spedrock was also built on increasing training for all levels of our organization to be able to have the tools to meet the challenges that we see every day. So we're very excited. I mean, I'm really excited. I don't know about the yellow hats, but I'm super excited about the name change and the clean new look. It's making sure that reliability, respect, cleanliness, and convenience are the front of everything that we do. And it's also, you know, taking transit not because it's your only option, but because it's your best option. Everyone in this room has heard me say we are not an organization just for the guy in the tie, no disrespect. Our bread and butter customer is the Head Start mom who's going to VOTEC after she drops her kids off and has to run by the grocery store. PRT is built on that foundation of giving the best service to everyone, regardless of what they're bringing to the table. We still have things that we can do better. We've been working for years on our own fare medias, but the fact remains that if you're in Ross and you want to go to Cranberry, if you're in Moon and you want to go to the Cracker Plant, if you're in Westmoreland and you want to go to work at the hospitals in Monroeville or vice versa, you still have to come downtown. You still have to transfer. You still have to pay 2 fares. Clearly, as a region, we can do better just by better collaboration and focusing on the fact we are a region. People travel our region. People come to our region together. So this is it's the next step in our evolution, and I'm very excited about it. We also are asking our board today to consider next year's operating budget. It totals $519 million, which is 5% higher than last year's budget. It's stressing the budget calls for no layoffs. Assumes a 15% increase in passenger revenues over last fiscal year based on expansion of our UPass and folks coming back to the bus. We also have a consistent budget for the number of operators. It is no secret that we are in the same hiring crunch that transit agencies and industries across the country are at. But we are committed to first, with our next schedule change, stabilizing our service, and then building up what we call our extra board, the additional folks that we have on standby. We have a very lean number. We will be expanding this. Once we have that number expanded and we know that we can cover service every single day, then we'll be coming back to the public through our standard processes, our documents on equity, and doing robust involvement to talk about where new service should go. But let me be clear, our priority is stabilizing the service we have today so that when you see a schedule, you know that vehicle is going to get there. Our staff has done yeoman's work in the past, 2 years and definitely the past 6 months of working like crazy to make sure that they can make the line. Our staff needs a summer vacation too. So look at us to stabilize our hiring, get more people in here to boost our extra board, and then we'll be coming back to talk about more service on the street. Our budget is $233 million in capital, $18.6 million in debt service, $96 million to purchase a new 107 articulated 60-foot buses, and over $100 million in fixed guideways improvement. So PRT is moving forward. We're not waiting. We're not treading water. We're headed for this next destination of excellent service and investment here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. And unless there are any questions, Mr. Chair, that concludes my remarks.
Are there any questions from the virtual world? Okay, with that, thank you, Catherine, and we'll move on to the report of the Performance and Oversight Committee from our chair, Michelle Zmanek.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair. The Performance Oversight Committee met last week, and I have 2 resolutions for your consideration. The committee first reviewed 3 procurement items and determined the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures. The price is fair and reasonable, the bidders to be responsible, and the bids responsive. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends the award of bids listed in the resolution for the total amount of $649,764. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
The next resolution seeks authorization to award a construction contract for the Wood Street and Steel Plaza System Improvements Project. The project will replace the tunnel fan dampers at the Wood Street and Steel Plaza stations and replace 2 rail substation rectifier transformers at the Castle Shannon and Library substations. Bid documents were prepared and publicly advertised, and 4 bids were received. After review of the bids, it was determined that the bid of Wellington Power Corporation in the amount of $6,996,000 is the lowest responsible bid from a responsible bidder meeting the authority specifications for the project. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends that the contract be awarded to Wellington Power Corporation, subject to completing pre-award requirements. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
May I have a motion to approve? Any,
moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. With that, we'll move on to the report of the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee from Mr. Chair John Tague. John, you're on mute. John, you're muted. Very unusual for you, but you're muted.
How come I knew you were going to make that wisecrack? Sorry about that. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members and stakeholders. The Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee met last week. I have a resolution and a few updates for the board. First, Jim Ritchie provided an update on the Pittsburgh Regional Transit PRT rebranding campaign. The Port Authority of Allegheny County announced the new name and brand PRT at a media event on June 9th. The public will see some changes happening immediately and others will take longer. For example, the service center and mega stop at 6th and Smithville has been completely rebranded and updated with the new logo. Rebranding 700 buses will take more time. The new buses will be painted to match the new brand and will look like the buses from the media event. Some of the older buses will be wrapped to look like paint, while the others will receive updated logos. Second item, I have a resolution requesting authorization for the Port Authority of Allegheny County to conduct business and operate it as the Pittsburgh Regional Transit. This resolution would authorize the authority to begin operating and doing business as Pittsburgh Regional Transit and PRT effective July 1st, 2022. Under the Second Class Port Authority Act, the organization's legal name is and will remain Port Authority of Allegheny County. The resolution allows the brand our business and operation under a fictitious trade name, PRT, without changing our legal name. The resolution provides for the CEO and the senior management team to take all necessary actions to update the system. Items such as vehicles, signage at stations and stops, uniform for employees, websites, and more, and any actions necessary to protect our intellectual property interest and investments. Items such as design, images, logo, and name. Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request approval.
Thank you, John. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And I'll take that as a second. Then any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. The next, the Committee on Accessible Transportation did not meet in June. Their next quarterly meeting will be scheduled for August 4th. Lastly, the Allegheny County Transit Council met on June 22nd. The council was provided with an overview of the Open Data Dashboard. The dashboard is an interactive platform that will allow the public to access lots of data that is commonly requested, and it also improves transparency. HR provided an update on operating recruiting efforts. And last, the council was also provided with an overview of the East Liberty Bus Extension Project. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 27th. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, John. With that, we'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee from Ann O'Gork as chair.
Morning, Chair and fellow board members. The Finance Committee met last week and I have one resolution for your consideration. This resolution seeks authorization to adopt the fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets and to execute local match certifications. At the meeting, Controller Peter Shank presented the final fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets. Mr. Shank noted that the final fiscal year 2023 operating budget did not materially change from the preliminary fiscal year 2023 operating budget presented in May. He reported that the final fiscal year 2023 operating budget totaled $518,974,705, which was a reduction of $687,295 from the preliminary operating budget. The changes between May and June operating budgets include wages and salaries decreased by $257,620 due to lower operator and maintenance wages related to using a revised average rate because of recent retirements. Employee benefits decreased by $66,200, predominantly due to an adjustment in retiree healthcare expense and FICA taxes. Materials and supplies decreased by $578,970, primarily due to an adjustment in diesel fuel expense. Purchase services increased by $198,500 due to an increase in work done by outside contractors and temporary help. Other expenses increased by $17,000. Federal stimulus funding used to balance the budget decreased from $96.37 million to $95.68 million. The final fiscal year 2023 capital budget did have material changes for the May preliminary capital budget. The fiscal year 2023 capital budget has increased from $215,246,501 to $232,865,463. Since the May meeting, the authority was able to repurpose approximately $13 million in state capital funding and received confirmation of its federal capital apportionment that was $2.1 million higher than reflected in the preliminary budget. The repurposed and additional federal funds will be used for the following projects: design phase for preventative maintenance on 23 bridges, restraining rail replacement, automatic trip stop functionality on the library line, South Hills Junction Building Number 1 CO system, South Hills Village Rail Center improvements, and specification phase for the light rail vehicle replacement program. This resolution would adopt balanced fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets as required by law. In addition, local match certifications are included to assure the required county match will be provided for both the operating and capital budgets. These local match certifications are a requirement of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll take that as a second. And then any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
At the meeting, Mr. Shank also reported on the May financial results. He reported that total operating income for the month of May was $5.1 million and was under budget by $3.4 million. Total operating income was $1.45 million higher than April. Total operating income for fiscal year 2022 is $42.4 million under budget for the fiscal year due to lower passenger revenue and access shared ride revenue. Federal ARPA funding will be utilized to make up for this revenue shortfall. Total operating expenses in May were $2.8 million below budget, with purchase services being the largest contributor to this variance. Total operating expenses fiscal year to date continues to trend below budget by $41.3 million. Total subsidy for the month and fiscal year was $7.1 million and $22.8 million below budget respectively due to lower ARPA invoicing. The authority did submit an invoice to FTA in early June to eliminate the current operating budget deficit. Finally, it was reported that the authority ended the month of May with approximately $162.6 million in cash reserves. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Ann. With that, we'll move on to the report of the Technology Committee from its Chair, Jen Liptak.
Thank you, Chairman Letland, and morning, fellow board members. Today, I just have one item to present for the board. Technology Committee met on Thursday, June 16th, and here's what I have for consideration. There were, the committee reviewed 4 procurement items and determined the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures. The price is fair and reasonable, and the bidders to be responsible and responsive. Therefore, the Technology Committee recommends awarding of bids in this resolution in a total amount of $919,334.50. So, my fellow members, I respectfully request that we approve this resolution.
May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll take that as a second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jen. With that, there is no new business, so we'll move on to a public comment. Our first speaker is Shane Scott. And I'll remind everybody of the 3-minute rule with respect to completing your remarks. Shane Scott? Going once? Going twice? Okay, with that, we'll move on to Danny Lebonsky. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Dan Yablonsky, and I'm the Communications Director at Pittsburghers for Public Transit. Over the last several months, we've been hearing stories about riders, from riders about ghost buses that never show up, overcrowded buses with riders and workers maskless, the impacts of bus pass-ups on parents and children, and on retail and hospital workers who cannot get to their jobs reliably. With another round of service cuts going into effect Sunday, one thing is clear. Riders need a transit service and operations plans to match the ambitious Next Transit Capital Plan. If this round of cuts is described as temporary, then riders need a plan to know how, why, and when our service is going to be restored and expanded. Because the trend over the last 2 decades is that once service is cut, it does not come back. PRT is not currently wanting for funding, but it does have a transit ridership and transit worker shortfall. Here's our thoughts on how PRT must move forward to fix both. On ridership and fares, there are only a handful of places in the U.S. where transit ridership has recovered to pre-pandemic levels. This includes Richmond, Alexandria, Worcester, Massachusetts. These are very different systems that have one thing in common: a fare-free system. It's clear that free fares and affordable fare policies are effective at bringing riders back on board, and PRT needs to look into these. The free transfer policy on Connect cards that took effect in January, while useful for those that use stored value and who can take a second trip within a 3-hour window, actually benefits fewer riders than the number who were harmed by the increase in single trip costs. Moreover, a greater percentage of low income and minority riders pay with cash than they do with stored value Connect cards, and they continue to be saddled with the costliest fares. Finally, on fares, we are long overdue for a policy to sell bulk bus passes to major employers and housing developers at a discount. Seattle's transit agency receives nearly 50% of their fare revenue from these bulk bus pass sales. This equitable program puts transit costs on corporations and institutions instead of individuals, who will give the agency, and it will give the agency fair revenue, support riders, and drive ridership up. On workers and safety, the service disruptions, which have been de facto service cuts, and the current round of scheduled service cuts are devastating. To fix this, PRT needs more transit workers. We're looking at a 200 worker shortfall. PRT's worker recruitment strategies are currently bringing about 15 to 25 workers every 15 weeks, but with the number of retirements and attrition of new workers once they start the job, we're concerned that these numbers just don't work out for restoring and expanding service. That's why we're urging Port Authority to rehire the experienced workers that have been terminated because of the vaccine mandate, as ATU Local 85 has offered, and to require more strict COVID testing and masking protocols among these workers. For worker retention, it seems critical for the agency to reach a quick and amicable resolution to the current transit worker contract negotiations. We also urge PRT to look to a new approach to the mask mandate, possibly adopting a flexible policy as similar to Pittsburgh Public Schools, where mask requirements are tied to community transmission rates. This is important for the safety of riders and workers. The rebranding of PRT will only benefit riders and workers when the agency focuses on the essentials: affordable fares, expanded service, worker wages, and safety for all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, our next speaker is Linda Warman.
Okay,
Good morning.
morning. All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, here in person and virtual. My name is Linda Warman. I'm a resident in Duquesne at Hilltop Parkview Manor Apartments and a public transit rider since I was born in 1964. The routes I usually take now are the 53 Homestead Park Limited, the 59 Mon Valley, the 61C McKeesport Homestead, and the 61D Murray. Well, I've noticed the number of buses that are being on this change is 61, and that's a lot. Now, even though some of those routes are going to see improvement, but that is still not the case with the 53, the 53L, and the 59. For example, currently on Saturday and Sunday, Saturday first, 17 runs, and on Sundays, 9 runs. And in 2 days with the change, they will only have 13 runs on Saturday and 7 runs on Sunday. And that's on that route alone. This will do more harm than good for the clients of Turtle Creek Valley Community Services, various services, especially with the DOS program, who take buses to and from jobs and activities out in the communities on the weekends. The 53L has 25 runs, and that starts at certain times, and also some runs that don't enter the Homestead waterfront in the afternoon. The changes for like this bus is running at 10 minutes, at an hour and 10 minutes apart starting on Monday, and that will also cause problems with other TC Turtle Creek Valley Community Service clients and who attend other programs like PSR community activities. This change going into effect may add riders, but it's already at peak capacity in the afternoons. And it's also known for some trips not showing up, like on June 17th, Friday, which a friend of mine was waiting on a 53 bus that is at 344 in the waterfront. It never showed up. She approached me when this happened. So what I also did is I looked between the two schedules, and I noticed the new time period for that 53L between the time that it comes into the waterfront in the afternoon and starts back up in the evening, between 3:43 and 7:03. That time period has a 3-hour and 20-minute wait. That's an increased wait time for the bus to start in the waterfront again in the evening. That brings us to the 59 Mon Valley. Weekday service scheduling times have been increased from 40 to 70.
Thank you.
I'll try to finish this. 40 to 70 minutes in the late evening. That's an hour and 10 minutes, which doesn't seem like a big deal unless you have a curfew. Picking up your kid daycare, other time restraints.
Thank
But
you. Okay, we have to move on to the next, but if you have something you want to submit to us, we can take a look at that. Thank you.
okay. Just somebody's got to give me a web address.
She will. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Andrew Hussein. Andrew, I know you're not in the room. Are you on virtually? Going once? Going twice? Okay, our final speaker is Charlie Barron. Morning.
Morning. I'm Charlie Barron, a resident of Squirrel Hill. Even though I live in one of the most well-connected neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, the recent Port Authority service cuts have made bus service unreliable for myself and my neighbors, which is destabilizing and detrimental for meeting basic needs. While I understand the challenge of hiring drivers of the last couple years is at the root of service changes, when service is cut, it often doesn't return. While service and ridership has of course been affected by the pandemic, now's the time to restore service to its normal frequency and reliability, then start increasing frequency. Though the pandemic continues, most of our country and our city is proceeding like it's over, returning to pre-pandemic outings, jobs, appointments, and for most people, this is out of necessity. However, public transit is an area that's not bounced back, and it's incredibly harmful to those who rely on it. While there has been decreased ridership, the reason ridership is low is because unreliable or infrequent service is driving riders away. If the last 5 times you waited for a bus that you needed, it didn't show up or it showed up very late, would you keep waiting for the bus? Or would you start asking friends for rides, calling a car service, ordering things online instead of shopping locally, or saving up to buy a car? If service were more frequent, people would return to public transit. It helps people make their bus connections and get where they need to be. When you read through the service changes that are to go into effect this weekend, they're mostly service cuts. The answer to lower ridership is not to make trips less frequent, eliminate stops, or eliminate routes. It's to increase service so that riders can rely on a bus arriving at a reasonable frequency. If people adjust to other modes of transportation in response to the less frequent service, they might not return to taking the bus if and when the service eventually increases again. If they don't return, this will hurt PRT's budget, our environment, and Pittsburgh's overall accessibility. To make Pittsburgh the livable city we want it to be, we need more mobility. Better and more affordable public transit means better air quality, more accessibility, access to jobs, and a more equitable city. Transportation is an intersectional issue. It affects racial justice, economic justice, housing, health, really every area of life. Please prioritize our citizens' needs and decrease cost for low-income riders and increase frequency, number of routes, and reliability. Thank you for your time and your work to make public transit work for riders.
Thank you. Okay, we have no more speakers. Our next regular meeting is July 29th. Look forward to seeing you then. And with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Yes.